Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in. Today, we're going to be looking at Litecoin and its valuations against Bitcoin. Doing pretty well today, up around 5% uh, on the day against Bitcoin. Yeah, 5.75%. We're pretty much back at the valuations we were before the mini dump that we had, and things are looking good. Uh, we're leaving the accumulation band as we initially expected, and if it is the move that we think the move is, then Litecoin will make short work of coming back up to the upper bound of the chart. When we look at 2017, it was week over week over week of green, and lo and behold, before we knew it, it was at 0.018. So with that said, this is the weekly, so it's not going to be like the next day we're going to be up at the upper bounds. But in relative terms of markets, this is a very quick move. If we look at the 2017 move, the move can arguably be said that the run started on March 6th, the week of March 6th, and ended May 1st. So if we take a measured move from that's what I want. So from bottom to top, we're looking at 56 days at a valuation increase of 520%. Okay. So that is essentially, 9% every day for 56 days straight. Now, obviously, that's not what happened. It didn't every day go up 9%, but you can understand that when you think about it, 9% every day for 56 days, that's pretty insane. Hence my argument that this move is pretty insane. And so and Litecoin made short work of that. And so that is the risk we're taking. Obviously, it doesn't have to go up to that level. But if if we look at the chart history, Litecoin has shown that it has done it before. If Litecoin is cyclical, where it's kind of goes up and down between 2 points of the chart here and here, then it is possible for Litecoin to make this move to the upper bounds. Now, um, I don't think I've done this with Litecoin, but every asset I kind of want to look at the chart and look at the Bitcoin valuation and kind of predict the dollar value, um, within the cycle, right? So this cycle, we're still in the cycle. The cycle hasn't stopped, doesn't have any indication of stopping. A lot of arguments say that Bitcoin is going to reach about $100 to $200. Some people even say $300, which I think is a little much. $200, 200,000 is probably a pretty good ballpark range. It can be going under, could go over, but most likely under. I think $200,000 would be the max. 225 would be the max price for Bitcoin. So with that in mind, right? With that in mind, let's kind of see what the price would be for Litecoin at the peak of the cycle. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, Litecoin would probably be at the upper bounds of the chart. Bitcoin would probably be more than $55,000, but we'll do a thought exercise of if Litecoin moves up and Bitcoin stays at $55,000. But more so, if we think that Bitcoin's going to be peaking at about, say, $200,000, and we look at where Litecoin had peaked against Bitcoin, well, in the last cycle, it wasn't right at the peak, right? It wasn't. It was actually, here. Bitcoin was about $1,800 when Litecoin came up to this peak level, and it came even more during the bear market. So, in the first rally, if we want to call this the first rally of Litecoin, um, and Bitcoin was very far away from the peak, but I would argue that we're a lot closer to the peak than last cycle, right? When Litecoin moved up. So if say Litecoin moves up from here and we get to a conservative valuation of 0.018 Bitcoin. Okay, so one Litecoin is the value of 0.018 Bitcoin. how much would the dollar value be? Well, it's quite the equation is quite simple. It's just the dollar value of Bitcoin multiplied by the Bitcoin value of Litecoin, and you get the dollar value of Litecoin. But we want to think, where would Bitcoin be, right, in terms of the market cycle, what the price of Bitcoin is, because that's the big unknown of that. So the first thought exercise is to think, okay, if Litecoin moves up to the upper bounds and Bitcoin stays relatively the same, maybe it goes up to say $60,000. Okay, so $60,000 multiplied by 0.018 brings us to a Litecoin valuation of $1,000.80. Okay, and so that's essentially a 3x from here, right? The Litecoin US dollar valuation is about 280, increasing to $1,080. That makes about that sounds about right. However, we know that Bitcoin's not going to stay at $55,000. It's most likely going to be higher. It can be lower, but I would say, because where Bitcoin is right now to the projection of where we think it's going to be by the end of the cycle, Bitcoin could be a little bit higher. So let's say Bitcoin's at $80,000. Okay, by the time Bitcoin reaches around $80,000, maybe Litecoin has already pushed up again to the upper bounds of the chart. Okay, if we're going to repeat the same moves that we have the last time, it was almost a double peak for Litecoin. So again, let's do it. $80,000 multiplied by 0.018, and we're looking at about a $1,440 Litecoin. And so that figure, around $1,500, is probably where I would gander Litecoin to be at the end of the, like, that's its market cycle peak. Now, that is a huge, huge, huge speculation. It could, and why it's a huge speculation is because we're speculating on the future price of Bitcoin, right? We know Bitcoin's not going to stay at $55,000 forever, but we have no certainty to think that, or no understanding to think that Bitcoin will be at $80,000 by the time that Litecoin makes a peak, right? As I said before, it took 56 days for Litecoin to reach from bottom to peak in the first run in the last cycle, and so 56 days from now is about like summer. It would be about maybe June, July, right? And so within 56 days, Bitcoin could be at $55,000. It could be a little higher. I would say it'd be a little higher. And I would gander about $60,000, right? And so on that peak, we could see that like between the, like, around $1,000, a little north of $1,000 in valuation. However, we know that when Bitcoin makes its macro peak and starts coming down, altcoins again get that resurgence, that manic bubble, as shown here. And so that this is where we would probably see the dollar value peak of Litecoin, right? So when we look at here, it was February. It was around February. Litecoin made a valuation of 0.02, which I don't think we're going to meet, and Bitcoin was at a valuation of $11,000. Okay, about a 50% correction from the macro peak. So, with that said, if Bitcoin does a macro peak of $200,000, say we retrace back about 40%, that brings us to about $142,000 Bitcoin. And let's say at that point, all coins have been in a manic, or are going into a manic bubble, and Litecoin makes another peak at 0.018. Okay, so let's do that thought equation as well. 200,000 divided by 1.4 is 40% correction, multiplied by 0.018, and we're looking at a $2,500 Litecoin. So, what I would gander, so we see the maximum peak, right? The least conservative calculation that we can make, where Bitcoin has made its macro peak and started correct down to about 100, and that's a big if Bitcoin reaches $200,000 as the macro peak, it corrects down. By the time it corrects down to 142, Litecoin, along with all other altcoins, are in another manic bubble, and it reaches a valuation of 0.018. It gives us a figure of $2,500. So that's a lot different than $1,440, where Bitcoin's at $80,000 and out of Bitcoin value of at the same Bitcoin value. And so that would be the range I would give Litecoin, between 1440 and $2,500 by the end of the market cycle. Not at the very end, but what I mean is that is going to be the dollar peak of Litecoin. And so here's the fun part. How much of a gain is that? So if we really think, obviously no one I don't think, or at least a lot of people have bought Bitcoin during the March crash when it was at $20. You might have. Congratulations, you made a lot of money. Currently, you've made 1,200% gain. But if we go to $1,440, we are looking at a 6,700% valuation. By 2,500, we're at a 12,000, 13,000% valuation. That's pretty intense. That's pretty intense. And so, I don't think this is, what is this? The Bitstamp chart. I don't even know if does Poloniex have. Yeah, they do. Here we go. So we know that the number at $2,500 is is a pretty astronomical number, right? So again, let's bring it up here. 2,500 gets us to about, from the very bottom, gets us to about a 10,000% move. Most likely people started accumulating Litecoin at about $48 if they bought this cycle. For people who bought at the peak of the last cycle, you're looking at about a 764% move up. I hope you might have dollar cost average down. So maybe an average of 138 or so, and you're looking at a 2,300% move up. So that's 10,000% is the number to beat. From the market cycle bottom to the last peak, we had a 23,000% move up. Okay, so we're not going to see the swings that we saw last cycle, mainly because I don't think we're going to get back to the Bitcoin valuations of like 0.03 or 0.02. We could, but I wouldn't count on it. There's the argument that when you look at the macro perspective, the peaks are getting lower, right? The peaks are getting lower. So there's something there's that to consider. Which is why I think the peak might be about 0.018, 0.015. But that's pretty much the range that we're looking at. We're looking at a dollar value of about 1440 to $2,500. Um, and that's, and 2,500 is an extreme stretch. Extreme stretch. The stars really have to align for Litecoin in order to do that. But that's not what I'm here for. I'm not betting on the big move, or not the big number of $2,500. 1440. I'll happily sell my Litecoin at 1440. But that's all for today, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye bye.